Welcome to the Murfreesboro City Council. It's June 4th, 2026 at 6 o'clock. We don't have anyone that signed up for public comment, and Austin Maxwell has our prayer and our pledge.
Bow with me. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this time together. We ask that you watch over this council, that you help us make the best decisions possible for all the citizens of Murfreesboro. Be with us and guide us to do what is right and what is best. In your name that we pray, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we'll move to our consent agenda. You have 4 items on the consent agenda. Is there anything that anyone wants pulled off? If there's not, can I have a motion?
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Ms. Saberwater.
Aye.
Ms. Gills Harris.
Aye.
Mr. Maxwell.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mr. Wright.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. All right, we'll move to item 5, City Council meeting minutes. Are there any additions or deletions to the minutes?
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Ms. Saberwater.
Aye.
Ms. Gills Harris.
Aye.
Mr. Maxwell.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mr. Wright.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. All right, we're going to move to old business, but we had a couple of clerical issues that we wanted to fix. So items 6 and 7 were reordered as items 7 and 6 respectively from our published agenda. So our new agenda is published now. So we have item 6, ordinance 26 OZ 12, rezoning of property along Memorial Boulevard. This will be first reading ordinance 26 OZ 12.
I'm glad you said something. I think I have the old agenda.
Out with the old and with the new.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council. Just as a reminder, back on May the 5th, May the 7th, you conducted a public hearing on the rezoning request from Kroger for the 3 parcels that are located at the southwest corner of Memorial Boulevard and Tillanook Lane. The 2 northern parcels are currently zoned RS15, and the southern parcel is predominantly zoned commercial highway, but has a small area in the rear that is zoned commercial fringe. Kroger brought to us a rezoning request to rezone all 3 of these parcels to PCD, Planned Commercial District, for the development of an approximately 99,000 square foot Kroger grocery store, as well as a detached fueling center. Back on May 7th, we had the public hearing. There were some concerns regarding drainage and some concerns regarding the proximity of the building to the western property line, specifically the residences that are to the west of the subject property, the existing residences there on Archer. So the applicant at that meeting indicated that he could likely lose some parking spaces, but he would have to confer with Kroger first. He did confer with Kroger, and they've since lost 60 parking spaces, or reduced the number of parking spaces by 60. They still meet the city's requirements. Kroger wanted to have extra spaces, but Kroger has agreed to drop those spaces to basically meet our minimum parking requirements at the city. That enabled them to shift the building about 30 additional feet to the east off of that rear property line adjacent to the folks on Archer. So essentially the building was approximately 140 feet from that rear property line, and now they're proposing with their new plan a minimum of 170 feet from that rear property line. With that being said, we do have first reading on this matter outstanding. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have. And also, Mr. Randy Perry, the design engineer on the project with GMC, is available should you have any questions regarding drainage. And Ms. Katie Knoll, our project engineer, is here again also if you have any questions about drainage.
Mr. Perry, how much, that retention pond, how many gallons will that hold?
Well,
Well, it isn't based on a gallon. I can tell you how much additional storage there would be
Okay.
on the different storm events. So the code requires a 2, 5, 10, 25, and 50-year, and then a 100-year storm event. You calculate your detention volume based on that. And the way it works is water goes in, it's held, and it's released at a controlled rate based on each storm event. On all of those storm events except the 100, there's an additional approximately 75,000 cubic feet of storage above what the code requires. On the 100, there's about 25,000 cubic feet of additional storage as the system is functioning.
So even on a 100-year, it's still above the standard.
Stays in, yes, sir.
And we had a lot of comment on drainage, but when you also say that, like right now, there's no storage on the property. So this is improving the drainage in that entire basin and area.
It is improving it, and we got into the technical weeds a little bit last time, but generally, from the Northridge subdivision to Haynes, that whole area, as developments occur, improvements come along with that. As it happens now, there are some drainage issues. As the developments occur, it improves a little. Our little corner, I'd say we're domino number 2. Northridge went first, and once they're built out and the roads are topped and the drainage is going into the inlets, you'll see an improvement. There may be an improvement now, I'm not sure, but there will be after it's topped out. We're number 2. It just so happens we're the next upstream piece, and we're reducing the amount of outflow by 8 to 10 CFS depending on the storm in a heavy rainfall. As each other piece develops between us and Haynes, more improvement will occur with detention that's required per code.
Any questions? All right, we've already conducted the public hearing, and so we need to consider on first reading ordinance 26 OZ 12.
Second.
Motion is second. Please call the roll.
Ms. Saverwater?
Aye.
Ms. Gels Harris?
Aye.
Mr. Maxwell?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Shacklet?
Aye.
Mr. Wade?
Aye.
Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Aye. All right, we need to move into ordinances now. Ordinance 26014, fiscal year 27 water sewer rate ordinance. And before the team leaves, we had a public hearing on the Kroger back 2 or 3 weeks ago, and there was a lot of discussion and work that went into that. So I just want to thank everyone who worked on that, listening to the neighbors for us to be able to go through and make this decision. That's how the process is supposed to work. So thank y'all for working so hard. All right, let's move to ordinance 26014, fiscal year 27 water sewer rate ordinance, second and final reading. Have a motion?
So moved.
Motion is second. Please call the roll.
Ms. Saverwater?
Aye.
Ms. Gels Harris?
Aye.
Mr. Maxwell?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Shacklet?
Aye.
Mr. Wade?
Aye.
Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Aye. All right, let's move to item 8, fiscal year 27 budget ordinances finance.
Thank you. We have a correction to Exhibit A for the debt service fund to correct the transfers outline item. Total expenses are not changing. And then we also have a correction to Exhibit B for the headcount projection, bringing the total requested headcount from 1,220 positions down by 2 positions to 1,218. We would ask council to consider approving these changes before approving the budget on second reading.
Second.
Motion is second. Please call the roll.
Ms. Saverwater?
Aye.
Ms. Gels Harris?
Aye.
Mr. Maxwell?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Shacklet?
Aye.
Mr. Wade?
Aye.
Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Aye. All right, we now need to move to ordinance 26015, fiscal year 27 appropriations, second and final reading.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. Please call the roll.
Ms. Saverwater?
Aye.
Ms. Gels Harris?
Aye.
Mr. Maxwell?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Shacklet?
Aye.
Mr. Wade?
Aye.
Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Aye. All right, let's move to ordinance 26016, the intent to adopt the certified tax rate. This is second and final reading.
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion is second. Please call the roll.
Ms. Saverwater?
Aye.
Ms. Gels Harris?
Aye.
Mr. Maxwell?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Shacklet?
Aye.
Mr. Wade?
Aye.
Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Aye. All right, let's move to new business. You have rezoning property along Gresham Lane.
Thank you, Mayor McFarland. Our first public hearing tonight is with regards to 2 parcels that are owned by Franklin Road Baptist Church They're the parcels located in the red and blue on the map before you. It's currently where Franklin Road Baptist Church's soccer field is located. It's a soccer field that's associated with with Franklin Road Christian School. And per the ordinance that was adopted last year, if a school wants to add lighting to a recreational field or sound amplification to a recreational field, that requires rezoning to a planned institutional development. And so Franklin Road Christian School approached us last year and indicated that they wanted to add exterior lights to their soccer field. And so they have requested the rezoning of these two parcels to planned institutional development. So you can see the aerial photo here, the balance of this entire block at the northwest corner of Franklin Road and Gresham Lane, and then bordered on the north side by Almernot Drive. All of those parcels are owned by Franklin Road Baptist Church. You'll see in a couple of months a request for annexation and zoning for the balance of their parcel, but this is just for the two parcels colored in red and blue. As a planned institutional development, they have submitted a pattern book that details the plans they have, shows where the light fixtures are proposed to be located, how many light fixtures they are proposed to install. There are some additional light spillover onto adjacent properties, but they're adjacent properties that they own that they intend to combine with these two parcels. They intend to consolidate all the parcels that they own there on that block. So, and there's just a minimal amount of light spillover onto Gresham Lane as well. The surrounding land uses, they're at the northeast corner of Old Fort Parkway and Gresham Lane is a gas station with a couple of small tenant spaces where Little Caesars is located. It's a larger parcel that's zoned commercial highway directly across from the subject property. There are some homes a little bit further to the north on Gresham Lane across the street. And then, of course, the homes that Franklin Road owns directly to the north of the subject property. The future land use map of the Murfreesboro 2035 Comprehensive Plan shows this the entire campus of Franklin Road as recommended for public institutional land use, and an athletic field that's associated with a school, and the zoning of planned institutional district is consistent with the recommendations of the comprehensive plan. So staff is supportive of this request for that reason, that it's consistent with the comprehensive plan, and that the proposed lighting and sound amplification should be compatible to the adjacent uses, as there is a commercial development directly across Gresham Lane, and the residence directly to the north is actually part of the FRBC campus. Planning Commission conducted a public hearing on this matter on April the 8th and recommended its approval. Mr. Sam Huddleston is here representing the application. He has a PowerPoint if you would like him to present it. Or if not, that is fine as well. He's prepared either way.
Does anyone have any questions? Thank you, Mr. Palmy. If there's no questions, let's open the public hearing, and we'll see if we have people that are wanting to speak and determine about Mr. Huddleston needs to speak. All right, we'll open public hearing for the rezoning of this 2.79 acres. Anyone wishing to speak for or against, please come to the podium. All right, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. We'll consider on first reading ordinance 26OZ17.
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion is second. Please call the roll.
Ms. Averwater?
Aye.
Ms. Gills Harris?
Aye.
Mr. Maxwell?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Shacklet?
Aye.
Mr. Wade?
Aye.
Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Aye. All right, let's move to item 10, the rezoning for property along Northwest Broad Street. This is planning for 167.42 acres. Mr. Blomley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Our next public hearing tonight is for the rezoning of property located along the northeast side of Northwest Broad Street. It's the area colored in blue. This was one of the two parcels that was zoned to commercial highway and gateway design overlay district back about 3 or 4 years ago, where the Legacy Sports Complex was proposed to be located. The property, as you mentioned, is about 167 acres, and the current zoning is CH and GDO 1. The applicants have requested a rezoning to PUD, Planned Unit District, and to remove the Gateway Design Overlay District designation from the property as well. Subject property is just to the south of the Northwest Broad 840 interchange, and you can see to the north of the subject property are residential lots in the Oakley subdivision, and then to the north east of the subject property is the wastewater treatment plant, and further to the east of the subject property is the Riverbend subdivision, and you can see the railroad tracks across Broad Street as well as a quarry there as well. The uses are, it's whenever we have a combination of different types of land uses, we use the PUD zoning classification, and their list of permitted uses proposed does include both commercial and industrial land uses from Chart 1 in our zoning ordinance. The proposed development consists of 7 buildings. You can see here, 7 buildings as well as a roadway network. And the plan also details the access into the development. However, rather than duplicate what Mr. Grover with SEC is going to present to you, I will invite him up to the podium and to make his presentation. Oh, there he is. The Planning Commission conducted a public hearing on this matter on April 8th and recommended its approval. This was also before the joint conceptual workshop between the City Council and the Planning Commission as well.
Thank you, Mr. Plumley. Mayor McFarland, members of the council, good evening. I'm Brian Grover of SEC. On behalf of the applicant, Claris Partners, and Representative Craig Daniger, I want to thank you for the opportunity presenting to you tonight. As Matthew stated, and I'll touch on this lightly, the project is known as the Hoard property, is located along Northwest Broad Street, just south of the 840 interchange. It is currently zoned commercial highway with GDO. This request to PUD would be requesting that GDO overlay be removed. Currently, the proposed PUD does not align with the future land use map. However, the Cherry Lane master plan that has been conducted, but I don't believe finalized, is proposing and supports industrial and commercial uses within this area. Some existing photos of the site as it is today. This is looking at the eastern entrance into the site, along with the western. This is looking down Northwest Broad Street towards the 840 interchange. You start to see that in the background. This is the adjacent property to the west, an example of the homes of those northern residential properties Matthew mentioned earlier. And then to the northeast is the wastewater treatment plant. The proposed PUD is approximately 167 acres as it is today. Of that, this development is proposing to dedicate a donation to the sewer treatment plant of approximately 5 acres. There would be just over 7 acres being used for internal right-of-ways, leaving approximately 155 acres to be developed within the planned development. This would be primarily industrial and commercial uses within this development, as the Cherry Lane master plan recommended to have commercial closer to along US 41 with industrial at the rear. There's 2 entrances into the site, the southeast entrance being signalized and the northwestern entrance being a right-in, right-out only. There is a cross-connection road that does continue up into the site that is east-west bound through the development, and there is a total of 7 buildings being proposed as a maximum. Now, combined, these buildings equal approximately 2.1 million square feet. The gray areas you see around these buildings are the parking, drive aisles, and the truck docks and loading areas. Due to the large amount of pavement and buildings on this site, there is a significant amount of detention facilities being proposed as well. You can see in the dark green. These detention facilities will be recorded within common open space lots, along with some of the natural features on the site, such as these wetlands and the Stones River just to the north of the development. The lots would be recorded on individual lots of record. Here's a conceptual layout of what that could possibly look like, with buildings 1 through 7 being recorded on those lots, and then the common open space being recorded within the green areas you see there. The development standards found on page 9 within the plan book are going to dictate and decide a lot of the standards within this development. However, there's 4 key development standards I want to go over. The first is that trailer parking will be screened from US 41. Entry points into the site, as well as the individual lots, will be designed to allow for proper truck turning and maneuvering throughout the development, and that the development will be providing landscape buffers on the east and west portion, along with a tree preservation easement along the Stones River to the north. In working with staff, the selection of uses for this development was carefully curated to make sure that it would be providing a balance between economic growth capability for the city of Murfreesboro and compatibility with the surrounding area. The setbacks for this development are found on page 11. I won't go over all those, but some key ones to note is that the rear setback for this development is 400 feet. We wanted to make sure we're going to mitigate any type of impact along those northern residential homes. And then the remainder of the setbacks are pretty typical within development. We're going to make sure we maintain a 42-foot setback from internal right-of-ways, including the right-of-way along US 41 as well, with the internal setbacks, side and rear, being 10 and 20 respectively. It is anticipated this development will be proposed in 2 different phases, with phase 1 being 4 buildings, approximately 47 acres, and phase 3 having the remaining 3 on the approximately 115 acres to the north of the east-west connection. Phase 1 will house a lot of the improvements for this development, including the pump station located in yellow there, along with the US 41 roadway improvements and entrance improvements. Now, a traffic impact study has been completed, and we've been working with TDOT to make sure that their design standards and what they foresee for US 41 is being implemented into this development. Part of that traffic impact study dictated that there would be turn lanes warranted coming into the site at both entrances. However, as you can see highlighted in the green here, it also recommended additional turn lanes for future capacity once the area begins to develop further. In order to make sure that these could be accommodated for, the amount of right-of-way needed for those turn lanes have already been incorporated into the design. And here's an example of the northwest entrance with the right in, right out. Along with phase 1, there will also be the dedication to the sewer treatment facility, and as well as the entirety of the right-of-way dedication for the internal right-of-ways. The architecture for the site, in order to avoid any type of monotonous or large monolithic walls, it will not be completely tilt up to prevent that from happening, and also be promoting some variation with the inclusion of glass and metal within the elevations as well. The Lot 2, which is located along US 41, will have some different elevations. However, they will be consistent, just enhanced. And here's some examples of what that would look like. So this is typical standard elevation for the lots throughout the development. However, Lot 2 along Northwest Broad Street would have enhanced elevations. Corner lot example, once again, mirroring that enhanced elevation for Lot 2. And lastly, the entrance, once again, being enhanced. The landscape for this development is going to be providing those buffers on the east and west portion of the property, as well as that preservation easement along the Stones River. There is also, along the US 41, some enhanced landscaping to be provided. And working with staff, we want to make sure that this, kind of being more of a front door as soon as you come off 840, looks the part as well. So there would be enhanced landscaping and architecture along that lot too, in the right-of-way for that landscaping. There are 2 exceptions being requested with this plan development. The first is that the perimeter yard and plantings between Lot 3 and 4 be excluded, essentially because there is a access drive through the middle of those lots and no green space to be had. And lastly, the common open space lots only provide the required perimeter landscaping along external lot lines and right-of-ways. With these exceptions and the architecture, especially the enhanced architecture, the development standards, and the carefully curated list of uses for this development, we think that this would be a great opportunity for Murfreesboro. If you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer those now or after the public hearing.
Any questions? All right, if there are no questions, let's open the public hearing for the rezoning of 167.42 acres. Anyone wishing to speak for or against, please come to the podium. All right, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing, and we'll now consider on first reading ordinance 26 OZ 18.
One question, Matt, for you. And I like the project. I just want to, data centers. A lot of questions around data centers now. Does this allow for a data center to go in there? I know we've had one developer that's gone back and forth with us and said they want a data center in another part of town. Does this allow for it? And if it does, would the developer be willing to forego that?
Mr. Grover, as I was double checking, mentioned that they have already removed it from the list of permitted uses.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Matt, I want to make just one comment. This has gone through about 5 or 6 years. I know Ms. Horde, we were just talking before the meeting, and this has had lots of reiterations on what was going on this property. There was discussion a couple of years ago of a lot of residential, and, you know, just looking at this, there's no transportation or traffic needs that would happen with going back to Murfreesboro. The people using this site are going to be going to 840. They're not coming into town. The traffic study showed that. There's no kids that are going to be living on this property, so we don't have to educate anyone on this property. There's no strain on our infrastructure that's coming in. So I think this is a win-win for the entire community based on economic development and employment for jobs for people to work. So I think it's a good project.
And Mr. Mayor, to that point, I did want to just correct something that Mr. Grover said about the Cherry Lane Stones Battle master plan. As you all know, that was approved by the Planning Commission on May the 6th. And so the recommended land use of what they're proposed, the recommended zoning is consistent with that plan that supersedes our 2023, 2035 plan. And it shows commercial along the front and industrial on the bulk of the property. So I just wanted to make sure that y'all knew that it's consistent with that plan.
Okay. Any other questions?
Second.
Motion is second. Ms. Tucker, please call the roll.
Ms. Saberwater?
Aye.
Ms. Gels Harris? Mr. Maxwell?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Shacklet? Mr. Wade?
Aye.
Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Aye. All right, let's move to item 11, the PRD zoning amendment for property along Las Casas Pike.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Our next public hearing is for a PRD amendment for the balance of the Laurelstone development tract. You can see the area along Laurelstone Drive here is section 1 that's already been developed and built out. I believe all the lots have been built out in that section. And the balance in blue, this area here, has kind of languished over the last few years. Actually, the Homeowners Association contacted the planning department a number of months ago and with concerns about why it was not, why development was not moving forward, and how the property was just kind of languishing, and the condition of the property. And so on behalf of the HOA, I made contact with Goodall Homes, the developer of the property, and interesting timing, they said they were going to be coming back to us in the very near future to amend their planned development. And so that's what you have before you today. So this planned development was actually originally approved about 10 years ago, and then they amended it around 2019 or 2020. The original plan included what they called the cottages and the villas. The cottages were rear entry, attached single-family homes on their own lots of record. The villas were 2 units attached, single-family attached homes on their own lots of record with front entry garages. As Goodall began to evaluate the market conditions, They have come to us now requesting to amend the plan development to make the entire balance of the plan development single-family detached homes. Their 2020 amendment actually added a few single-family detached homes in there, and this would actually make the entire remainder of the development single-family detached homes. And it would actually decrease the overall density by 2 units, going from an overall unit count of 184 down to 182. The comprehensive plan, the future land use map of the comprehensive plan shows the subject property as being classified as auto urban residential, which has a recommended density of 4 units per acre to 12 units per acre. And this development falls within that density range. So it is consistent with the future land use map. The surrounding area is primarily residential in nature, although there are a few scattered institutional uses, a couple of churches, one here, and the new Murfreesboro Medical Clinic facility is located there, which we'll actually be discussing that property very soon. Of course, Oakland Middle is to the east of the subject property. So Mr. Troy Gardner with Pape Dawson has a presentation that he would like to give you on this with the details of the proposed development. I'd be happy to answer any questions before or after the public hearing that must be conducted tonight. The Planning Commission did consider this at its April the 8th meeting, at which time it recommended approval. And so I'd like to invite Mr. Gardner to the podium to present.
All right, good evening. I'm Troy Gardner, landscape architect with Pape Dawson, here tonight on behalf of Goodall Homes. As you just heard, we're here to request an amendment for the previously approved Laurelstone PRD to replace the future villas and cottage units with the single-family detached units. If this is granted, the total unit count would be reduced by 2 units from a total of 186 down to 184. This request is being made because the developer no longer offers the cottage or villa product line. Just show you the previously approved plan, and then in comparison to the proposed plan. So by and large, the overall layout is very similar. Did want to point out that there are quite a few amenities proposed with this plan. The amenity center located kind of in the center there includes a 2,500 square foot cabana with 2 restrooms, a meeting space and community room, a built-in kitchenette, attached cover mail kiosk, and the pool and pool equipment. Also proposed is land dedication in this area for the for future greenway per the greenway master plan to be constructed by the city. In the interim, there will be the developer has proposed a temporary walking trail that would go in that area prior to the greenway being constructed by the city. We've worked with staff to address all of the comments that have been open on this project, and think we're in good standing with them, and so we're happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions? Any questions? All right, we need to open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak for or against the PRD zoning of approximately 37.87 acres, please come to the podium. All right, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and we'll now consider on first reading ordinance 26 OZ 19. Motion and second, please call the roll.
Ms. Saverwater?
Aye.
Ms. Gels Harris?
Aye.
Mr. Maxwell?
Nay.
Vice Mayor Shacklet?
Aye.
Mr. Wade? Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Aye. All right, let's move to item 12, rezoning property along Monroe Street and East Castle Street.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Allow me to page down for a second. Here we go. Our next public hearing consists of two parcels located at the northwest corner of East Castle Street and Monroe Street. There are currently, on each of those parcels, an existing duplex. Mr. David Criswell owns both of those parcels. This was actually before the joint conceptual workshop meeting in December, so all of you, this should be familiar to all of you as well. Mr. Criswell would like to tear down the southernmost duplex on this property, combine the two parcels, and add a fiveplex on the southern portion of the property. He has other similar small multifamily properties where he offers a unique housing opportunity of small apartments that meet a need in the community, kind of a niche of folks who want people who may live by themselves, or folks who may need an inexpensive apartment in the city. And so he is proposing something very similar to what he has on Lytle Street near Central Magnet School. The surrounding area is predominantly residential in nature. There is a church here, and that's First Baptist Church, and the new parking lot is located here that was recently completed. The property is currently zoned RD. The future land use map of the Murfreesboro 2035 Comprehensive Plan shows the subject property as suburban residential, which is single-family detached homes, density of 1 unit to 4 units per acre. However, just to the west of the subject property is the mixed form housing classification, and so staff believes this is a good opportunity to use the transition policy and to kind of blur the line between where the mixed form housing recommendation starts and the suburban residential land use classification starts on the future land use map. Mr. Criswell would leave the northernmost duplex as it's in better shape than the southern duplex, and it would become a part of the development. So there would be a total of 7 units in all, the 2 existing units on the north side of the property and the 5 new units that he would propose there right at the corner. The Planning Commission considered this item at its April the 8th meeting, conducted a public hearing, and then voted to recommend approval to the City Council. We'll need to conduct a public hearing tonight, but before we do, Mr. Chris McGuire has a PowerPoint presentation on the development that he would like to give you.
Hi, everybody. Thank you all for hearing me today. Chris McGuire with Huddleston Steel Engineering, and I'm here to represent Monroe Street Flats PRD. Matthew done a fantastic job covering it, so I will try not to blabber too much. Currently, as he stated, there are 2 duplexes on the property. Is there a way to make it show my whole screen? Hit that right there. Thank you. Perfect. On the south side are where the 2 existing duplexes are, and they would be replaced with the fiveplex. The total square footage of the fiveplex is around 3,600 square feet. So that averages out to about 600 to 800 square feet per unit. It is it is the most affordable living project that I have presented here before. Typically when we talk about affordable living, it's affordable relative. This one appears to be truly affordable housing. Get to the site plan. So the total lot acreage is 17,000 square feet. The merged density is about 17.9 units per acre. The fiveplex is actually 3,442 square feet. and the existing duplex is 1,256 square feet. We do meet the minimum parking requirement for 8 stalls for the units. For the landscape plan, we are having a 3-foot planting buffer along the rear of the townhomes and foundation planting along the street frontages. We are requesting some exceptions. The first exception is on the maximum density to 17.92 acres. The second exception is regarding actually removing the duplex and putting the 5-plex. Exception 3 is to allow parking along the frontage of the multifamily units. 4 is for the 3-foot perimeter planting in lieu of a 10-foot type A buffer. Exception 5 is to have reduced front sidewalks to a 4-foot sidewalk, which is much more residential in nature than a 7-foot. 6 is a waiver for a type D landscape buffer along the northernmost property line. The reason we are requesting this one is the existing duplex will not change, so there's no need to, we do not feel that there's any need to enhance landscaping for an area we are not disturbing. An allowable build line to 25-foot, allowable 5-foot rear setback instead of a normal 25-foot in the RD zoning, and exception 9 is allowing 6 trash carts for the 7 units. I'm happy to answer any questions I can. I won't carry on any longer.
How much are you going to have per unit, cost-wise?
Can you say that again?
How much cost-wise per unit?
What are the monthly?
Monthly rents for the 1 bedrooms about $1,000. For the 2 bedrooms,
David, you
come up. Sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you. For the 1 bedrooms, probably around $1,000. For the 2 bedrooms, probably $1,500, maybe a little less depending on the market. But I know that may sound crazy. Believe it or not, that's considerably lower than the average monthly rent in Murfreesboro now.
Definitely. Another question, how many cars per unit are you allowing? How many parking spaces?
We have, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong on the final revision, 1 parking spot per bedroom and then 1 additional visitor spot.
Okay, when you have an overflow, where would those people go?
Potentially street parking. This is a very small, quiet street. It's only 1 block long. There's lots of room. Every other house on the block, people already park on the street. So.
I know right directly across the street is my church parking lot. I think we can park 200-something cars. Do you think?
So it's actually behind, the front will be facing east,
Okay.
and the parking lot is west. Yeah.
And I'm not saying they can't park in the church parking lot. I'm just thinking of liability.
Well, they wouldn't be parking there, and they keep it blocked off during the week anyway. So.
And I will say, I believe that 1 parking spot per bedroom is typical in the CCO, and I don't believe you've had parking issues on his other developments. We had discussed that with staff early on, whether this was typical and how much he typically expected for these type of tenants, and it was rare that there were multiple cars for his tenant type.
Thank you.
All right, we need to hold a public hearing on the rezoning of this approximately .39 acres. Anyone wishing to speak for or against, please come to the podium. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and we'll now consider on first reading ordinance 26OZ20.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Ms. Saberwater?
Aye.
Ms. Skills Harris?
Aye.
Mr. Maxwell?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Shacklet? Aye. Mr. Wade? Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Aye. All right, let's move to item 13, rezoning along East Pitts Lane. This is the rezoning of approximately 2.05 acres.
Thank you. Our last public hearing is for property that I referenced earlier. It is located along the north side of East Pitts Lane. It's actually on MMC's property, which is directly across the street from the Laurelstone rezoning that you considered earlier this evening. This is for a platted lot in MMC's subdivision. MMC has their main parcel here, an out parcel here, an out parcel here, and then an out parcel here. And they are currently working with Ascension for the development of a freestanding emergency room at this location. The CF zoning district does not permit a hospital, and our zoning ordinance would classify the freestanding emergency room as a hospital. So they have requested to rezone that one lot in the development to CH in order to permit that freestanding emergency room. The subject property, as I mentioned, the MMC facility that is just about complete, and there is a church here on the corner of Pitts and Las Casas, another church here, the Laurelstone development here, and to the south and east of the subject property are some large lot single-family homes or single-family lots in the unincorporated county. The right-of-way of East Pitts Lane is not in the city limits. That has not been annexed. There was a neighborhood meeting about this rezoning last week, and I believe that there were some concerns about access on East Pitts Lane. Tonight's request is simply the rezoning of the property from CF to CH. Whatever happens with the access or whatever happens with East Pitts Lane will be something that will have to be dealt with regardless of if it develops in its current CF zoning or the proposed CH zoning. The recorded subdivision plat does include an access easement down from the MMC property to East Pitts Lane. And I apologize for the quality of this plat, but this is the recorded plat for the property, and there is an access easement right there to allow there to be access through the subject lot. And Lot 3 is the lot that is that you are considering for rezoning tonight. So this request went before the Planning Commission back in August of last year. Planning Commission had some concerns about rezoning it to commercial highway without the state approving the certificate of need for the hospital facility on this lot. So after Planning Commission recommended its approval subject to the issuance of the certificate of need, we held off on placing it on a city council agenda until such time as Ascension could be before the state. I believe after several lacks of quorum before the state, they were finally able to get that approved, the certificate of need approved in March. And so we have since advertised a public hearing for tonight and for you to consider this zoning request. As I mentioned, it's not a planned development. It's just purely the rezoning from CF to CH. So there's no formal presentation on what they intend to do with the property. You're just considering the merits of the rezoning itself. However, I do believe that there is a large contingent of folks here ready to answer any questions that you might have if you have them, folks from MMC and Ascension as well, and Joey from Dow Smith. So I'd be happy to answer any questions before or after the public hearing.
Has there been any discussion with the county about Old Pitts Lane?
About East Pitts?
East Pitts, yeah.
Ms. Knoll, do you know if I'm going to defer that to Ms. Knoll.
Good evening, Mayor and members of City Council. I was able to dig up an email from May of last year from Greg Brooks, and he's got a list of things that he wants on East Pitts, mainly 28 feet of pavement, and then how some drainage improvements and things like that. A culvert needs to be moved due to the widening and things like that, but it will be under the county's review and their permitting. The city doesn't, with it not being an annexed city road, we will not be reviewing the plans for that.
Okay.
But they plan to do that?
Yes. Yes, sir.
Within
It'll be a part of the project when it's developed.
Okay.
Okay. All right. we need to open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak for or against this rezoning of approximately 2.05 acres, please come to the podium.
Good evening, Council. My name's Steve Wright. I live at 1540 East Pitts Lane, and I realize all this was passed years ago, the development and everything, and access of East Pitts Lanes was part of the deal. But at that meeting and when the city approved this and took over the property, I believe all the traffic was supposed to go through the main highway instead of East Pitts Lane. And I would just like to know if that is the plan of the majority of this traffic to go through the main MMC, and I believe that was even brought up in the August meeting, that traffic was going through MMC instead of East Pitts Lane. And that's pretty much it, I think.
We can get that answered at the end. Thank you, Mr. Wright.
Okay.
Okay. Anyone else wishing to speak for or against? All right. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. We'll now consider on first reading ordinance 25OZ28. John.
I remember talking about that at Planning Commission as one of the things we wanted at Planning Commission, but I had a secondary question also, probably for Dale Smith. The property eastern adjacent had, I guess, prior property owner had a handshake agreement to kind of drain off into the pond that's no longer there. Is there any way to make some kind of agreement from the eastern adjacent property to tap into that? I think the culvert that's on the back, or the pipe that's on the back, is higher elevation than his property is, but now he's getting, it's not that he's getting more water than he had, but before the water was at least being able to drain onto this property, and now it's not being able to drain onto this property, so he's getting an impact of water that used to flow into that pond. Is there a way to get some kind of tap to get that water back across into that property?
Speak to that a little bit. We had a meeting earlier this week, and I visited the property. Whatever day it was pouring down rain, I think it was Tuesday. That's always the best time to go look at drainage issues. So I did notice that, and then at that meeting with the engineers for Ascension, they have discussed changing the drainage up, piping it, and making sure that it works better than it does now.
Coming off of Mr. Polk's property?
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
I'm supportive of the project, but I know when we had the discussion, there was a lot of discussion with MMC going on this property because it was not in the land use that the city had, and so we went against the land use, and I think the majority of the council talked about how that was good for the entire community. An emergency room is going to be an absolute benefit not only to the city but to a lot of the county residents that live in that area. But people are going to take East Pitts Lane to get to that emergency room. So it is imperative that East Pitts Lane is improved from Old Las Casas Highway back to that property. Otherwise, people are not going to drive through MMC's parking lot and infrastructure to get back to there. So I'm 100% supportive, but we need to make sure with the county that there's a significant amount of tax revenue that MMC's paying for the county and the hospital will be paying. That road needs to be improved with the project.
Greg Brooks wants to require, as I said, 28 feet of pavement from Las Casas Pike to the entrance.
Yeah, we just need to make sure that we can't bind what the county's going to do.
Correct.
And the way that's funded. So we just need to make sure that we don't have the neighbors coming to us saying that we've got all this traffic on a road that cannot handle that traffic. Because right now, I drove out there to look at the site. That's just a 2-lane road right now. So small. So it's going to have to be improved.
What's the current width of the road right now?
It's probably 18 to 20 feet, I think is what it is right now.
And it's not up to Greg, it's up to the road board, correct?
And I believe our ordinance also does require that if you're developing on substandard roads, it doesn't specify whether it's county or city, that those roads would need to be, the developer would be required to make improvements to bring them up to a more standard condition.
Yeah. I mean, I'm thankful for what Ascension's doing in the community and what this is going to provide to the area, especially with what MMC's, what your project out there is top notch. It looks great. I think we all could just see that if you're having an emergency, you're going to take
Yes.
the path of least resistance, and that's going to be on East Pitts Lane. And so we just need to make sure that that's part of the agreement on that road getting improved.
I think we can enforce that with our substandard road.
Okay.
Where's the city boundary? The reason I bring it up, and I'm not picking on the county, but I'll pick on the county. If they didn't want to improve it, and we say yes to this, and they need that road, then in theory, they could come to us and ask to be annexed, and then we're on the hook to fix that road.
Do the shared pennies pay for it?
That's my point, is we keep losing. How many shared pennies do we lose this time?
Yeah, we don't have to annex the road.
We don't have to annex it. The road needs to be fixed. I just want to make sure the county's going to fix the road.
Can't make the county fix the road.
I mean, I watched the meeting the other night. I know that they're taking money away from other places to be able to put to road funding. So hopefully this may be one of the areas that funding can be taken care of. Look, as long as we have an agreement that East Pitts Lane is going to be addressed, and it sounds like the county's going to do that, that's one of the things. And if our sub guidelines that we have based on the construction require that to be fixed, then that's going to be something everyone's going to have some skin in the game to make sure that that's done before the development is completely finished. It's just going to, I mean, we all know if it's not fixed, it's going to be an issue for an emergency room for people trying to have ingress and egress off of a state road onto a substandard county road.
Yes, sir. We hear you loud and clear, and we'll make sure to work with the county when we get a site plan in.
Sounds great.
And I think at Planning Commission, we did discuss the emergency vehicles are going to come off of Las Casas, right? I think we discussed mostly that at Planning Commission, correct?
I think what they said.
If you have any questions operationally for Ascension, they have
Yes.
representatives here.
Well, Mr. Blomley, do you recall that conversation at Planning Commission? I think we had discussed, the neighbors on Pitts Lane were concerned about emergency traffic, the sirens, and we had discussed them entering and exiting from Las Casas.
I don't recall that specifically. I do remember them saying, though, that the majority of the vehicles leaving going to and leaving the facility would be ambulances, and that it wouldn't be essentially a destination emergency room. Am I recollecting that correctly?
Yeah, I think I remember the same thing.
Oh, that's true, because it's an FSE. That's right.
Yeah. Daphne David, CEO of Ascension St. Thomas Rutherford. We are, the site plan that we will be presenting to you all has the ambulance coming straight off of Las Casas, straight into that space with a slight turn to the right. Our goal is to encourage all traffic to come off of Las Casas Pike, and we've shared with the community, we're not going to be able to prevent all of that from happening, to your point. So we definitely want to be a good citizen in how all that's managed, but understanding that would be a change for our neighbors. Ambulance, encouragement, Las Casas Pike.
So not East Pitts Lane.
That is not the encouragement. Well, could they potentially go out that way? Perhaps.
Yeah.
But the turnaround currently on the site plan is the turnaround facing the MMC building.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. David.
Any other questions?
Any other questions?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second on ordinance 25 OZ
Y'all figure that
28.
one out.
Jinx.
Wow.
All right, please call the roll.
Water.
Aye.
Ms. Gills Harris.
Aye.
Mr. Maxwell.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Shacklet. Aye. Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mr. Wright.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. Thank you all for investing in that area. All right, let's move to item 14, Resolution 26R20, fiscal year 27. This is the MCS budget.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. Tonight, I am presenting the resolution for our city schools FY27 budget. The budget includes our general purpose fund, school nutrition fund, extended school care program, federal funds, and our 21st Century Community Learning Center grant. I did previously present the FY27 budget during the May 14th City Council workshop. Since that time, we have experienced a delay in receiving our weighted full-time equivalency average daily attendance data from the Tennessee Department of Education. As a result, we do not yet have final confirmation regarding the percentage division of local tax revenue between our district and Rutherford County Schools. In order to plan responsibly, the general purpose budget before you reflects a reduction of $1,012,073 in local option sales tax revenue, along with the corresponding adjustment in expenditures compared to what was presented in May. Aside from that change, all other revenue sources, expenditures, fund balance information remain consistent with the workshop's presentation. The revised general purpose budget recognizes total projected revenues of $133 million and projected expenditures of $118, with no change to fund balance from what was presented at the workshop. I appreciate your consideration and would be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Does this incorporate the county's taking of shared pennies once again from your budget?
So right now, the budget for property tax, we have budgeted at the same amount we did last year. So we did no budgeted increase to sales tax last year. I'm sorry, to property tax. So last year we reduced it from 15 million to 14 million for property tax, and we've left it at 14 million for this year. Correct, Daniel?
Okay.
So if there's any additional movement, right now we just level funded it.
No other questions. I move for approval.
Second.
Motion and second, please call the roll.
Ms. Saberwater?
Aye.
Ms. Gels Harris?
Aye.
Mr. Maxwell?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Shacklet?
Aye.
Mr. Wade?
Aye.
Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Aye. All right, let's move to Resolution 26R29, fiscal year 26 budget amendment number 7.
Tonight, I'm also presenting a resolution to amend our FY26 budget. These revisions were previously approved by the school board during their April and May meetings. The first part of this resolution amendment is an increase of $98,654 in new revenue through the state's IDEA high-cost reimbursement. These funds support unusually high-cost special education services and will be used to offset expenditures within our special education program. Additionally, on May 26th, the school board approved several budget amendments, including recognizing $776,000 in new TISA outcome funding and $1.5 billion in general purpose interfund transfers. The newly recognized TISA outcome revenue will be used to align our end-of-year projected expenses with actual expenditures, and the interfund transfers represents previously approved funds within the general purpose budget that will be used to adjust several accounts to accurately reflect our year-end spending. These amendments do not include any programmatic changes and will have no impact on fund balance. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
If
there are no questions, I'll move for approval.
Second.
Motion and second, please call the roll.
Ms. Saberwater?
Aye.
Ms. Gels Harris?
Aye.
Mr. Maxwell?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Shacklet?
Aye.
Mr. Wade?
Aye.
Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Aye. All right, let's move to the Resolution 26R16. This is the stormwater fee.
Mayor and council members, thank you. I'll be presenting this tonight. Ms. Smith is on vacation. So we are asking you to consider amending the base rate for the stormwater user fee. We are currently at $3.50 per month. We are requesting that fee go to $3.75 per month, so an increase of 25 cents. This is specifically targeted to help fund capital improvement projects such as Town Creek, Mall Circle Drive, and some of the old Fort Park ball field renovations. I'm available for questions if you have any.
Only question I got is, Darren, how do we communicate this to the general public? Do we put that in the notice or let them know that, hey, this is going up, or they just figure it out on their own?
Yeah, well, I think we do put out notice. We go through the workshop. We went through the workshop. I don't know if we actually send a formal notice out. Do we send anything out, Doug? Not official? No. I mean, we do have a little, I know in our bills, our utility bills, we do have a placeholder for putting out special messages. I don't know if that's something, I know we're getting kind of close to the implementation date of July 1, so I don't know if we can get that out or not. But no, there's really not, for something this minor, we really have not sent out any major. $3 a year. Yeah, so.
I mean, it's minor, I just think.
Yeah.
I know Austin probably read the same comment I was sent, and, I think the city's been very transparent when we look over the years, our 5-year plan that we've budgeted for water loss, where we were working on our fees. We've worked on, the council has voted multiple times over the last 10 years on this 5-year solid waste plan. We talk about it almost every single year. So I think we've all tried to be very transparent on, where we are. And the issue with the solid waste fee, a lot of people will talk about property tax. People would be surprised of how many people in our community don't get trash service. So if you live, for example, in a retirement community, that you don't get public trash service. So if you live in a townhome community, you don't get public trash service. So when we raise taxes, or if we had to raise taxes to do that, you're getting taxed for something that you don't pay for. So this whole purpose of this was to be able, if you use the service, to pay for it. We have 66,000 cans per week that are picked up, but there's way more than 66,000 cans in our community that are not picked up by city services.
Correct. I do know that we have an affordability, and we try to keep the water, sewer, and stormwater fees below 4% of the very low income earner, which is 50% of the median. So we're really, we have a very affordable water and sewer rate, and 4% of the average annual income of a very low income earner. It's very affordable.
Okay, if there are no other questions, I'll move for approval.
Second.
Motion second, please call the roll.
Ms. Saberwater.
Aye.
Ms. Gels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. Maxwell.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mr. Wright.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. All right, let's move to item 17. OPEB, other post-employment benefits, Resolution 26R17, fiscal year 27.
This resolution allows the city to continue offering medical, vision, dental, and life insurance to our eligible former employees, retirees, and council members. I recommend for approval, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
So moved.
Second.
Motion second, please call the roll.
Ms. Saberwater.
Aye.
Ms. Gels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. Maxwell.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mr. Wright.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. All right, let's move to fiscal year 27 budget resolutions. Resolution 26R18 with the Water Resource Department.
And I'm not sure if y'all have to vote on these individually or if you can vote on them at once, but these are the resolutions that were presented earlier for water resources, stormwater. We also have the Community Investment Trust and the Sports Authority resolutions here. Mr. Peach, should they vote individually on these resolutions?
For them to vote individually on them.
Okay.
You knew that was coming.
That's
Aaron.
rude.
I mean,
So moved.
Second.
motion is second.
Ms. Saberwater.
Aye.
Ms. Gels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. Maxwell.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mr. Wright.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. All right, we have resolution 26R19. This is your stormwater.
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion is second, please call the roll.
Ms. Saberwater.
Aye.
Ms. Gels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. Maxwell.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Wade. Mr. Wright.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. All right, let's move to the Community Investment Trust. This is resolution 26R21.
Second.
Motion is second. Sorry.
Ms. Saberwater.
Aye.
Ms. Gels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. Maxwell.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mr. Wright.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. All right, lastly, we have the resolution 26R22, the Sports Authority.
So moved.
Motion
Second.
and a second. Please call the roll.
Ms. Saberwater. Ms. Gels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. Maxwell.
Nay.
Vice Mayor Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mr. Wright.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. All right, we now have a contract for TDOT for matching transit facility funds. Mr. Bashirs.
I was thinking it was cruel for Darren to make me be the only one on motion tonight.
It'd be cruel if he made you have a PowerPoint.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. Do you have a PowerPoint with transitions?
What did you do to make Darren mad?
So the Transportation Department is recommending your approval of a contract with TDOT for matching transit facility funds. The construction of the transit facility has had 2 federal grants associated with it, which of course requires 2 state matching contracts. The contract for this particular federal grant has expired, so this is a new contract to allow us to go ahead and draw down state funds that we need to complete everything associated with the construction of the facility. If approved, this contract, again, will allow us to close out those activities and reallocate those funds to other projects that we could use those funds for. The city's match for this contract is $177,162,000 and is accounted for in the department budget, and I'll be happy to answer your questions.
If no questions, I move for approval.
Second?
Motion and a second, please call the roll.
Ms. Saverwater?
Aye.
Ms. Gels Harris?
Aye.
Mr. Maxwell?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Shacklet?
Aye.
Mr. Wade?
Aye.
Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Aye. All right,
Thank you, Mr. Brashear.
thank you, Mr. Bashir.
Bring a PowerPoint presentation next time, though.
Do not.
All right, you have several board and commission appointments, and I want to make a quick comment. We need someone for the Board of Zoning Appeals. So I know Jamie is working on it. We talked about this. If anyone has a recommendation, Davis Young, after many years of great service on the BZA, is retiring. So, all right, you have recommendations. This came from our Building and Codes Department to revise to appoint Chris Barnes and David Counts to replace Philip Lynn and Richie Boland. Their term would be 7/1/2026 to 6/30/2030. This is a 4-year commitment. And also to reappoint Jason Fan, 7/1/2026 to 6/30/2030. The Board of Electrical Examiners is a pretty specific appointment. They have to be in the electrical field or the heating. There's several different requirements. So these are recommendations.
Move for approval.
Second?
Motion and a second.
Ms. Saverwater?
Aye.
Ms. Gels Harris?
Aye.
Mr. Maxwell?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Shacklet?
Aye.
Mr. Wade?
Aye.
Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Aye. All right, on the Board of Zoning Appeals, Tim Tips would like to serve again. His term would expire on 6/30/2029.
So moved.
Second?
Motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Ms. Saverwater?
Aye.
Ms. Gels Harris?
Aye.
Mr. Maxwell?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Shacklet?
Aye.
Mr. Wade?
Aye.
Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Aye. Reginald Harris and Brian Prance are current members of the Planning Commission, and they have shown interest that they want to serve again. Their term would be 7/1/2026 to 6/30/2029.
I don't know Reginald,
That's Reggie.
but
Yeah.
Reggie sounds good. Move for approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Ms. Saverwater?
Aye.
Ms. Gels Harris?
Aye.
Mr. Maxwell?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Shacklet? Mr. Wade?
Aye.
Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Aye. And lastly, Sandra Trail. She has been a long-term standing member of the Water and Sewer Board, and she has shown the willingness to want to serve again, 7/1/2026 to 6/30/2030.
Move for approval.
Second?
Motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Ms. Saverwater?
Aye.
Ms. Gels Harris?
Aye.
Mr. Maxwell?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Shacklet? Mr. Wade? Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Aye. Beer permits.
We have 3 special event permits for the Charity Circle for events on August 14th, September 11th, and December 5th. The applicant has met our requirements, so we recommend for approval pending any final building and codes inspections.
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion is second. Please call the roll.
Ms. Saverwater?
Aye.
Ms. Gels Harris?
Aye.
Mr. Maxwell?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Shacklet?
Aye.
Mr. Wade? Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Aye. Any statements
No,
for?
sir.
All right. Any other business from staff? I don't think we're meeting next week.
Workshop.
The workshop.
Okay.
Yes, we're trying to make sure we have a good agenda for you. So
Okay.
we may play that one by ear a little bit. I'm not sure we have any workshop items, so more to come on that one.
Okay. So maybe yes, maybe no.
Maybe.
Okay.
Pencil it in.
Okay. All right. Definitely the next Thursday, I believe, we're scheduled to meet. We also have the council and the mayor candidate forum is that Wednesday, I believe. Does that sound right?
On Monday, Wednesday.
Yeah, so,
Meeting on the 18th.
We are meeting on the 18th. We are not scheduled to meet on the 25th.
okay, all right. It's getting that time of year, is the reason to ask. So, all right. Any other business from staff or council? Seeing none, we'll stand adjourned.